All right, let's dive into some more asks. I don't think we'll see her in season 2 of Daryl Dixon. The Book of Carol will likely be more Carol episodes than Daryl, maybe season 3. I mean, it's possible, but I think we will see her, or at the very, very least, they will come to a realization that she's alive. They will get some indication of her. And the main reason I think that, what was I reading? Dang. I was reading something not completely unrelated. It was a TWD thing, but something that didn't really have anything to do with Consumed, but they referenced Consumed in it. And they were saying that Consumed was very much a Carol episode. It was about Carol's demons. It was about her trying to overcome her demons. And, let's face it, she didn't entirely overcome them in that episode, but it was a story. The inner character arc of Consumed was actually not about Daryl. Even though it happened against the backdrop of him searching for Beth, they were focusing on Carol in that episode and the demons she was struggling with at that point. And Daryl was there trying to help her through them while they happened to be searching for Beth. And that really jumped out at me. Like I said, I have this problem, you guys. I can't tell you how often I go to my fellow theorists and I'm like, I read this thing recently. Can you guys tell me which meta that was? Like, who wrote it? Was it one of you? Was it one of the other big TD meta writers? Or was it like, maybe it was in an article I read from comicbook.com. I read so many things and I don't write them down and then I can't remember where I read them. So if I ever don't reference you correctly, something that you wrote, please let me know and I will make sure that I fix it. But most of the time I just get so much information, this barrage, that I can't remember where it all comes from. Anyway, that particular line, like I said, I was reading, it was probably something about the new Daryl Dixon season or something. It was something about what's going on currently. And it was like a one-line reference to Consumed that said, Consumed was, and I'm paraphrasing, very much an episode about Carol's demons. And that really jumped out at me because Daryl Dixon season 2 is called The Book of Carol. So, and I've said this many times, but it just sort of reinforces it for me. The way that they set up the arc in season 5 is the template that they will follow when they find Beth again. Okay, so Beth and Daryl got separated. Then he saw the Grady car, and he and Carol jumped in a car and went looking for her in Atlanta. And they did end up finding her. Carol got taken prisoner. And then, of course, things didn't end well because she got shot in Coda. But I believe that they will follow that same template in terms of the way that they put together the story in order for Beth to come back again. So when Melissa McBride couldn't do season 1 of Daryl Dixon, I believe everything had to be pushed back. We might have seen her in season 1, Beth, but because Melissa McBride couldn't do it, they just took that opportunity to do a story about Daryl and him kind of exploring France and meeting some new characters. And don't get me wrong, I loved Daryl Dixon season 1. I thought it was fantastic, but of course I would have liked to have seen Beth a little bit more in that first season. But now that Carol is coming back, that just reinforced it for me. Okay, they were waiting for Melissa to be able to be part of the show because that's the template they set up. And it needs to be that way when they find Beth. And so when you think about it, Consumed was a very big part of that template in season 5, and they're saying, like, I guess I don't remember who actually said it, but it seemed like it was Gimple or Nicotero or somebody who said that reference that I'm talking about, where they said, yeah, Consumed was about Carol. It was about her demons. If they're doing that again in this template where they're going to find Beth, then it just makes sense that season 2 is going to be about Carol and her demons. So to me, that just reinforces that they're on their way to find Beth. So think of it this way. You could maybe equate season 1 of Daryl Dixon when he's in France by himself as the time from season 4 when he was alone on the road after he and Beth got separated, right? Eventually, in A, which is something we should analyze a little bit more too. A is a very interesting episode. In A, he finds Rick and Michonne again. And the reason that's interesting is because there's all kinds of symbolism in that episode, all kinds of foreshadowing for all of the characters, not just Beth, but we do see Beth there in flashback taking care of Judith. So Rick is found. And interestingly, outside of Beth and Daryl, Rick and Carl were by themselves and then Michonne found them. So you could almost see that as a foreshadow of what we just saw in The Ones Who Live. That, of course, Carl has passed on now, but Rick being by himself for a while and in a coma, kind of being unaware of things, and then Michonne finding him. Anyway, then Daryl reunites with them. Now, I'm not saying that Daryl is necessarily going to reunite with them with Rick here, but when Carol comes to him, she'll probably tell him that Rick is back, so at the very least he'll know that Rick is alive. Kind of similar to him finding Rick and knowing he's alive in A. Anyway, so then, obviously, Daryl and Carol being together in Consumed, it is the next season, but it's time-wise, it's pretty much right after that. In Consumed, they go to search for Beth, and that is what we're going to equate Daryl Dixon season 2 with. Okay, you see what I mean? So we had the first part, now we're getting into Consumed, and then after that is when he finds Beth. So all I'm saying is that, I'm rambling today, but I do think that at the end, by the end, if not earlier, of the second season of Daryl Dixon, they will know that Beth is alive. And I've said this many times before, that we do know, because people have said it, that it's been filmed that way, that he and Carol are going to jump on his bike and go somewhere else in Europe, right? I think that will be very similar to them getting in the car to go search for Beth. And in that moment, in season 5, they knew she was... I guess they didn't know for sure she was alive, but they knew that they were going to look for her. So it wasn't like they were going to do something else and stumbled across her. Daryl got in the car because he recognized the car that had taken her, and he knew he was going toward her, and he was going looking for her. And so I think that's the way it will be at the end of this too. So that means they have to at least have some clue that she's alive, and I think there's a very good chance that we will actually see her, and she will actually be in it, but then something will happen and they'll get separated again, and so then Daryl's going to go looking for her. So anyway, I can see that a lot of it is going to be focused on Carol, and it's not like Beth's going to come back in episode 1 and we're going to have a full 8 episodes about Beth and Daryl. I'm not thinking that, but I do think that this is leading to her, and by the end of the season, we will definitely have proof that she's alive and she's out there, and that's where they're going next. The other thing we were talking about is how early they have decided to put the season on. Originally, when they announced it, they were saying fall of this year, if not winter. And I remember that because I was like, what? Were they going to make us wait that long? I was all ticked off about it. And so I'm very happy that they've moved it up till June. But one thing we've discussed is that usually they wait until for the big cheese, I guess you could call it. They'll wait until Comic-Con, which is in July, so that they can promote it. That's what they always did with the flagship show. There would be a new season. And so in Comic-Con, which is in July, they would promote it, and then the new season would begin in October, a few months later. So it kind of made sense originally, because even though the Ones Who Live got really, really good watches, like lots and lots of viewership, Daryl Dixon is still blowing everybody out of the water, right? That one's getting more watch time than anything else. So that's really their big production right now in terms of the thing that's really carrying the universe, way more than Dead City is, with the Ones Who Live being a close second. So you would think that they might want to wait till after Comic-Con to really, really promote it at Comic-Con, but they're not. They're putting it before Comic-Con. So what me and my fellow theorists were just discussing was that if, even say it's the very last episode, we figure out that Beth is alive and then he's going to go looking for her, because the show starts in June, it's going to end right before Comic-Con. And so maybe it's a matter of they'll drop this huge bomb on the fandom that Beth's really alive and he's going searching for her, and then Emily could actually be at Comic-Con, and they're going to be promoting the crap out of what just happened in the show. So that makes a lot of logical sense to me. So I think that could be another way that they're going about it. Of course, we'll just have to wait and see, but I'm not worried about it. I'm really, really excited for what this season is going to bring us. So I hope that answers your question. Next one. I was looking for information about Emily's death dinner, but I ended up having a little bit of my hopes go down because I stumbled on interviews of Scott Wilson saying he felt Herschel was going to die filming 403, and that Scott Gimple told him after 405 that his character was being killed. I also read that Alana Masterson and Caitlin Nacon were told that their characters were being killed 1 to 2 weeks before the filming of their deaths. We've been telling for years it was impossible that Emily only found out in 507 she was being written out, but it looks like it's a common thing for writers to tell this kind of news last minute. I don't think all the actors are lying about this. I read that Stephen Yeun and Michael Cudlitz knew for a year about the deaths of Glenn and Abraham, so it feels sometimes it's early news and sometimes last minute. So I know that everything you say is true in the sense that it has been reported that way, but when you say you don't believe the actors are lying, that's where you and I differ. I think they are lying. And I don't mean that in like a nasty way or I'm accusing them of anything bad. But we have a lot of evidence that they have talking points and that they are told to say certain things that are not true or that are at least misleading. And you have to understand that that is in their contract, okay? So they're not lying just to be mean, nasty people. They have to do that. It's part of their job. So the one that I do use a lot is Glenn and Abraham's death, because that's the one we have the most blatant information for. The others we have... It's more evidence that people knew before they did that was going to happen. But the Glenn and Abraham one, the actors all admitted it. So we actually have the admissions there. And that is just that they kept saying all the way up until not even 619, after 619, all the way up until 701 aired and we found out who was killed. All of the actors, every single one of them, were telling us we have no idea who dies. We have no idea who it is. We filmed endings where everybody got killed so that we wouldn't know who it was, and they haven't told us, and we have no idea who it is. Okay, guys, it was a freaking lie. As soon as that episode filmed and they did the big TTD afterward, they all admitted that they had known for a year. It wasn't Michael and Stephen that had known for a year. All of the actors had known for a year, and Michael and Stephen had known for 2 years. So everything they said, they looked right into the camera and said, I have no idea who it is. Okay, it was a lie, but they had to do that. They were made to do that through their contracts. And if anyone had said anything else, they would have been fired. So you got to understand, I'm not judging them for this, and I don't judge them for this. It's just part of their job. So Scott Wilson, I couldn't say for sure about him, but I think he knew before he did. I know that it was still kind of a bummer because he had bought a house with his wife not too long, but I think it was 6 months or a year before. And then I know that right after he purchased the house, he found out he was dying, but that still would have been like 6 months. It wasn't a week before or 3 weeks before. So, and the other thing you have to understand about filming, and they create a lot of misdirection about this, is that every single time they have done all of the filming long before it airs on TV. So... one thing that's I don't know, like, it's not that they say that when episode 3 airs, he didn't know he was dying. Like, they're talking about the filming, which would have been, long before it aired. But at the same time, I think it gives this misdirection to the audience because the way that they film it and the way the audience consumes it are two different things. So when one of them says, oh, I found out in 403 that I was dying in 408, to the audience, that feels like it was 3 weeks before. When really that all happened like a year ago when they were filming. And to your point, that still wouldn't have been very long that the actor knew, but I think they do that on purpose because it feels like it was very recent and very sudden to the audience, when really the actor has known about it for a really, really long time. People say that, one thing people say about Emily is that even if it's true that let's just say for a moment that it's true that she didn't know until 407 what was going down in 408, 507, 508. She didn't know until 507 that Beth was going to be shot in Coda. All of that would have been filmed months before it aired on TV. Okay, so by the time 501 was on and everybody was watching it, Emily already had filmed everything for Coda. She knew all of it. And in The Talking Dead after Coda, not after Coda, after Slabtown, she was happy, she was bouncy, she was talking about Beth's potential, and how great it was, and you know what I mean? There was absolutely no indication that anything was wrong. And, you could say, oh, well, she couldn't tell us that because it would have been spoilers, and that's absolutely true. But my point is that then when she goes on to The Talking Dead after 408 and says, I didn't find out until 407, to the audience, that feels like she found out a week ago, when really she's known this for a year, and it's all acting. Right? So we have proof that they lie about this. We have proof that they can absolutely act about it. And again, I'm not saying that's a negative thing. That's just part of their jobs. It's what they do. The other thing that I want to say is that sometimes you just have to read everything and really kind of read between the lines, because the actors will usually accidentally spill the truth somewhere, but their official reporting will sometimes be the lie. So again, back to the Negan example. Officially, the story was that they didn't know. And then they admitted afterward that they had known all along, right? So I think the same thing could be true about some of these other characters. They'll say, because I know that, and unfortunately I don't have a reference for it, but I know it's been said before that The Walking Dead is very respectful to its characters, especially its main characters, and they do tell them ahead of time where it's going. We also know that Gimple meets with all of the main characters, and later it might have been Angela King or whoever the showrunner was. He would meet with them before they started filming and tell them where their character was going for the season. And I believe that anybody who was dying anywhere in that season found out then before they started filming. They have pretty much said that, or at least implied it. But then afterward, when a character dies, they almost always, without exception, go, "Oh yeah, I just found out like 3 weeks ago." So they don't want. They'll kind of tell us the truth or talk around it in other ways, but they also are careful because they don't want the general audience thinking, "Oh, well, they're already filming this, so they already know what's going to happen," and then getting all kinds of questions about it. You know what I mean? So they just throw a lot of misdirection out there. So as I said at the beginning, I'm sure everything you said here is right in that definitely has been reported, but I think there's a lot of misdirection going on there. I think Scott Wilson knew way before 405 that he was dying, and it might not have been a year before or 2 years before, but I think he knew before they started filming season 4. I think he knew he would be dying in the mid-season finale. With Caitlin, Nacon was not the biggest character, so I can see it being less for her. And understand for the smaller characters, that doesn't necessarily apply if they're not going to be on the show as long. So somebody like Noah, I don't know. He kind of said the same thing, that he got the sense he was dying but didn't learn about it until a couple of weeks before. I could see that more with him because he was not a big character. He was not even in a full season. But at the same time, if they had season 5 planned out in advance, I kind of think that they would have told him, "You're just going to be in a few episodes this season, then you're going to have a super gnarly death," even if they didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. I kind of think that he might have still known, but he didn't say that he knew. He said that he was killed, or that he was only told a few episodes prior. So again, I just don't always trust what the actors say about this, because we have caught them in lies before. So just keep that in mind. And for the most part, the vast majority of the main characters have been told far, far in advance. Even if you are not convinced by anything I've just said and you want to put that aside, one thing that I always go back to is that in Still, so season 4 with Beth and Daryl, she walks into a mannequin that has its arm stretched out. And the arm is stretched out exactly like Beth's arm is stretched out after she falls in the hallway at Grady. Now, that is very, very clearly a foreshadow of what's going to happen at Grady. Like, they had it planned to the point where they knew how she would fall and how her arm would land. That was very, very intentional on Gimple's part. So maybe that alone doesn't prove that she lived. Like, you could say it was a death foreshadow, but it does debunk the fact that she didn't know about it until episode 507. They had that planned for a long time. And we know she met with Gimple before season 5 filming because we have a picture of it. And Gimple is doing this goofy look like something about Beth is a mystery. And so when you look at all of that evidence, I just don't believe that she didn't know what was happening. And if they always knew that they were bringing her back, all of the mountains of evidence we have, the fact that she hasn't worked for any other companies, that she hasn't had any other big acting gigs, that they bring up Beth as a deceased character more than all the other deceased characters combined in the fandom. The fact that she was just recently at a French con talking about how great Beth's death was and how great it would be if she could come back now. And I mean, all of the evidence we have, I just don't believe that Emily didn't know about it all along. Some of the stuff Andrew Lincoln said, I think all of the main characters, just like all of the main characters knew that it would be Glenn and Abraham dying, I believe all of the main characters, meaning Rick, Michonne, Maggie, Daryl, obviously, Emily, I believe they have all always known what was going on. And then you have the Grady actors, right? The people that were the cops at Grady, who and Dr. Edwards, they have always dropped hints for us, of her coming back. And so I think they knew. how could they drop those hints if they didn't know she was coming back, if they didn't know she wasn't dead? And if they knew, no way Emily didn't know. You know what I mean? So for me, I understand that they say things like this, and I understand that people believe them. That's why they say them, to misdirect the audience, and it usually works. But I just don't trust it because we have mountains and mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence to the contrary. That's all. So anyway, thank you for your question. I will stop there for today, and I will be back again tomorrow.